Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first item of business is we had minutes from the August meeting, and comments were made and submitted and circulated. Any comments from any of the board members on minutes? No. I can have a motion to approve the minutes. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the minutes from August are approved. Sarah, everybody is up to date on their taxes?
Yes.
Okay. Then the order for the items for this evening are as follows. First item will be 2018-14, 99 Bracebridge Lane. Second will be 2019-18, 65 North Broadway. Third will be 2019-13, 107 Harriman Road. And fourth will be 3 Hillside Avenue, 2019-21, 3 Hillside Terrace. Fifth will be 2019-20, 2 Barney Park. And sixth will be 2019-19, 16 North Astor Street. So with that, let's begin with 2018-14, Calvin and Fury, 99 Bracebridge Lane.
John Malone, Ferguson Malone Architecture, representing Calvin Fieri. We received a memorandum from Han.
Excuse me. I seem to recall this was approved. Why are you back?
Why are we back?
Yeah.
Because we made modifications to the stormwater system.
Did you implement them without approval?
Yes, the owner did. Yes, they did.
So he went on his own.
Yes.
So why are we bothering with?
In order to, we were directed to.
Why should we reprove things if the owner's going to do what he wants?
Well, the owner, we've discussed this with the owner. They understand that they shouldn't do any work prior to permit. The work that they did, they thought was something that was extra outside of the permit. They did work to grading that they thought was something that they could do without a permit. They've been instructed that that's not the case. And
Are there any penalties involved with the extra work that was not approved?
There'll be double fees on some of the work.
Proceed. Were there any trees cut down that weren't supposed to be?
There was a tree that was damaged that was the result of them installing shrubs that were part of the site plan approval, a hedge for the neighbors. So there was a tree that the roots were damaged, and that tree is being removed.
Has been or will be?
Will be. And nothing's being done until there's approval and permits moving forward.
Well, that's what we said the last time.
Right. No, we understand.
Continue to be.
Right. I think our clients are here today to hear this, and yeah.
Continue to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Fees assessed if this continues on. If this is the second time, as I recall last summer, when I went out there with Suzanne Nolan, our landscape architect, we had found that there was work that was done ahead of time at that point also without approval. When you were already coming in for a site plan approval. There were limbs that were cut off a tree that was, that we wanted to see.
The linden tree.
Yes, that large tree that was on the property. So, I mean, this is now number
Yeah,
two.
that-
Three strikes and you're out.
Right, so those tree removals, again, we were not aware of that there had been any work on there, and I'm not sure that was identified to was that identified to our clients that was an issue?
At that point, yes, it was. Certainly was, yeah.
Yeah, okay, because I'm not,
No,
No.
no, it was not.
Yes. It was identified as an issue back in last August because I was out there with you
Yes.
and with
If you're
Suzanne
you
Nolan.
need to come up to the microphone,
I
please.
think-
And it was an issue. There was work done twice that hadn't been approved. There were limbs cut off a major tree out there that was part of the site plan approval that you were requesting, and when Suzanne and I went out there, we saw that, and that was not supposed to have been done. You shouldn't have proceeded with that.
Okay,
And now we're at
Let's just not
a
retell.
excuse me, let me finish. Let me finish here. There's also a tree that has been cut down that was on the neighbor's property. That wasn't even on your property, okay?
With the permission.
That's- And now you're coming back in again because there was work that was done on the site plan that you did not have a permit to proceed. All right? So this is now the second time.
All that I'd like to do is make sure that we don't redo history. When the limb had been removed from that tree, that was prior to us knowing that it was not right to remove a limb from a tree that was going to be in the site planning process. We never tried to do, in fact, it's important for everyone to know, we have never tried to do anything to go against rules and regulations. So that limb that was removed from that tree has not damaged that tree. That limb was removed because it was a very, very large limb that was completely covering our backyard. So that's just the most important thing, I think, just so that if everybody's going to retell history later, that, from our point of view, was the issue. We then had a discussion about the trees. We had already cut that limb, all right? So I understand that this is an issue that's very important to the town. First point is that we do the things that we do not realizing that they're going to be against the other site plan regulations or et cetera. In our opinion, when we dug our trench, it wasn't even going against the site, the rules and regulations. But I respect what you're saying. We are not going to do anything that is not within the confines of the regulations at this point. We have been held up from our construction for 1.5 years. We have purchased this property. We purchased this property in December of 2017, and we haven't been permitted to do anything on our property to clean it up so that we could have grass grow, so that we could prevent water from coming into the house for 1.5 years. So we're trying to do our best within the restrictions that we have imposed, and you know Irvington is very, very restrictive. But please let us use our property a little bit. We're trying to follow every rule and regulation. You could prevent us from ever building on this property ever if you want. But I would beg you to please respect that we want to do the best for this property ever. We have never done anything that has harmed it. It turns out, after all of the reviews, that everything we did actually is going to improve the property and going to help the trees to live. So we're not doing harm. We're not a big developer who's going to put a big building on the aqueduct. We have a 1,600 square foot building with trees on it that we want to improve for the betterment of the entire village. So please let us do that. That's our hope and our wish, and we want to work with you and work with everyone here. So please don't revise history.
Well, you say you want to follow the rules and regulations. There was an approved site plan as of last August, as I recall, and yet you went out and did work within that was on that site plan without, and yet you say you want to follow the rules and regulations. If you want to do that, then follow the rules and regulations. Listen to your architect, listen to your landscape architect, listen to your engineer, and follow what they are telling you to do when you're supposed to do it, not when you feel like doing it. If you get an approved site plan, then you wait till you get the permit to begin construction, and then you do the work.
I think that's clear now that we're not going to do any additional work, including any changes to the trees or the soil that near the tree or anything that's been done until we have the permit pulled. We understand that. That's the path moving forward. We understand that now. And I think just as a background, I think some of the items that we've gotten into trouble here is that the client was assuming that those were preparatory items that were minor. They thought of it as planting as minor, preparing the site as minor, and they were doing that in a sense to try to expedite and move forward. The fact that those things that were minor in their head turned out not to be minor in terms of installing a silt fence. If it was installed wrong, it potentially did the damage, and that's what led to this. They understand that now, but just so you understand, I think there wasn't an intent. The intent to get a jump on something. They know that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen again. So they weren't things that were done that were to try to change the approved product. Both the installation of that hedge on the south side of the property and the installation of the silt fence along the aqueduct was in the approved site plan, and it was installed similarly to what was shown on the plan. It's just that there wasn't the expertise involved. We've indicated that none of that should happen without the expertise and without the permit pulled. So it's
I have a question on the timeline. What did you say was approved?
I think it's last August or so.
Well,
It's in the
there's-
resolution.
I didn't
No,
read
it was approved November 7th.
November, okay.
November 7th of 2018.
Okay, so the,
That was a
any
delay.
delay between November and today, almost a year, 10 months, we had nothing to do with. So to say that it was delayed and we've been holding you up since 2017, I mean, we had nothing to do with November to today.
Process.
So we've been sitting on,
Again,
land that.
you're making it
couldn't
sound
get
like we
something,
had
you
something to
couldn't
do.
even- You're telling us
You
you
ma-
couldn't
excuse
even
me.
prune.
Excuse me, you're making it sound like we had something to do with the delay between November and today. And you're here today because you did whatever you did, and that's your own fault that there may be a delay in approval of whatever he's presenting tonight.
John, you've been around here at Irvington for a while. Sorry. You've been around here for quite a while. You've been presenting to just about every board that is in the village of Irvington. And I think your clients should realize that they should come to you and ask something. If they want to do something, you go to your architect or your engineer, say, can I do it?
But I think part of the issue is that there are certain things, if you're not a builder, or you're not in front of these boards, is something that in your mind you think that planting of shrubs is something that you go out to the nursery, you buy the shrubs and you put them in. So what you're seeing is when you have a situation where the homeowner is doing their own work, which is this case, that is what led to the misconception. So stuff that was associated with, owner work, like landscaping and stuff like that, is the stuff that they took on themselves that was in our world of the planning board approval is part that is crucial. That's part of the site plan approval. In their world, it's something that you do on the weekend that's associated. They're going to do stuff. So they understand that now. I'm just saying, but as there was not ill intent, and I think what Tracy wants to indicate is that there wasn't ill intent to move forward ahead of the approval. I think it was a misunderstanding of what that kind of work is and how that can't be separated from the planning.
I think in the future, you should tell your clients if they want to do anything on their own, go run it by you.
Right, and we have been communicating on that piece.
And
Yeah.
this is just an example. It was a mistake. We asked John before we did it, and he said, you plant the silt fence according to the thing, and we looked at the map, but the way that we saw the map was different from the way a builder would see it, and that was it.
Yeah, the
It was a
detail.
mistake. We did communicate, but we made a mistake.
Well, unfortunately, you have to go through the process
For making mistakes.
of
No, I mean,
correcting your mistakes.
Yes.
Right.
yes.
You made a mistake with the machine in the drip line of the trees, okay? And installing silt fence is not something that usually the homeowner does.
Right. That's my
It's
point.
usually
That's
not
my point.
installed with a machine.
And it's not.
And it's not installed with a machine.
And when
It's almost, if you look at the installation instructions through the DEC, it's usually installed by hand.
and then also when we pointed out the issue and we reviewed the detail, they understood immediately that they did it too deeply and they did it with a machine, and they had gotten advice to use a machine that was incorrect. I think that the point I just want to make, it wasn't ill intent, and it was inexperience, and we're trying to correct that now.
Patrick, don't do that. Don't make a face as though we're trying, we're
You know,
criminals.
You need to speak on the microphone for the transcript, I'm sorry.
Please don't make a face. We are not criminals, and I really would prefer it if you would respect that people do, if in an effort to make their property better, that they may make mistakes, and that there should be some sympathy for homeowners who care for their property. And even if we have disagreements or we learn from it, please don't imply that we've done something intentionally. And I don't really appreciate that face.
Well, you know what I don't appreciate is that it was done twice. Okay, it wasn't done once. It was done twice. Okay? That's what I don't appreciate. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. I don't appreciate that. So, let's go on, John.
Okay, so we've, the modifications that we made is we've shown the locations, which are based on the requests that we had last week. We've shown the locations for the mitigating plantings. We have confirmed the stormwater piece with Doug in terms of the changes, the expansion of the stormwater system that was proposed to be added. We were asked to indicate to confirm that would make the condition better than what's there right now or what was proposed in the original site plan. So that's been picked up, and right now, I guess the memorandum received, there were no additional things that Doug was looking for on this.
No, but I think what was important, what you haven't mentioned is the memo from Malcolm McBurney, the consulting arborist.
Oh, yes.
Okay, which is most important here, that he found that most of what your consulting arborist had said was okay, but the one important item is that the only portion, now I'll read from, excuse me, from Mr. McBurney's memo, the only portion of Mr. Gutter's report I would take issue with is the use of fertilizer as part of the remediation plan. The use of fertilizer in the case would be counterproductive. My recommendation is to apply Campustat, a growth regulator, to slow the growth of the tree so it can redirect its energies to root repair. And I think Suzanne made the comment too that, Suzanne Milne, a landscape architect, made the comment that the plans have to be modified to change the wording to regulating, because I think you had something which sounded more like you're trying to stimulate growth. I think that was the word that was used, was stimulate on your plans, and it should be regulate the growth.
Okay.
And that has to be changed on it.
Okay, we can make that change.
Any other comments?
Yeah, if you take that left-hand, 8.5 by 11. I don't know, one of the plans I looked at, maybe I was wrong in looking at it, but the downspouts for the barn, if that's what you're gonna call a barn,
Right.
appear to be outlet to daylight on the aqueduct property.
Yes.
Is that,
Doug, I think Caesar has a question regarding the outletting of the stormwater onto the aqueduct.
I seem to recall those downspouts from the barn were going to a stormwater system. I may be wrong, the last time we approved it, but now they appear to be going to daylight onto the aqueduct property.
You were, in the original approval, did you bring one around the front?
No.
Yeah,
the out-
I thought-
No, there's been no change to the approved, the barn was never included in the site plan approval for the house. The barn is a separate,
Well, I didn't relook at the barn.
Yeah,
Nothing's
there was
changed.
never stormwater treatment in this approval associated
As
with the
far as
barn.
I remember, I thought that it was brought up front.
I thought it was,
For some
too.
reason it changed.
We go back to the minutes.
I'll have to
If the
go- I
conversation,
gotta
we agreed to move it to the front.
I don't
Pretty sure
remember,
it
so I
wanted
can't
to
say.
petition.
But you as a neighbor, whatever was, are we okay today with downspouts going to someone else's property, in this case, it happens to be the state park? On each corner of the barn.
Right.
Well, nothing had changed.
If you go to another.
Those are existing roof leaders?
Yeah, I know, they presently go to the aqueduct.
Right.
But if that's, there's duct tape and, you're gonna make that a permanent discharge to the aqueduct?
You know what it was? I think it was redirected.
It was on the east
Towards the
side.
property.
It was on the east side of the barn, you had a downspout
And
coming
there's a
down.
swale.
that-
There's a swale to bring it back.
And if he
more
flips the
towards-
page, you can see notes that it's the outlet.
John, there could be a swale or something. like that.
Right there.
Moves it into a-
Those little arrows seem to indicate that the
Oh,
outlet. Those
so nothing
downspouts.
has changed. So those downspouts are set in the same location, but there is grading to direct the.
And I thought the note, maybe I read it wrong, but I thought the note said it's to daylight, and not the word daylight, but discharge to a splash stone.
It does, and then,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then,
for the
then
swale
it's
next to it.
recreated towards the property. It's gonna end up circulating around eventually, go to the local.
And what about the one on the south side, south?
There's no change on that
West.
side.
That's gonna go a splash pad to the aqueduct?
Yeah, there's no change on that.
Yeah, that was what that's what was going on.
That's okay?
Yeah. I mean, initially.
Do you have
we talked
anything
about
from
Directing it.
New York State Parks that they like your water going on the property?
This has been reviewed with the aqueduct. They
What
have no
about-
issue with water in this area right now because of the way that, the offsite water is moving through the site and collecting in the swale that's in this portion of the aqueduct. Anyway, there's no
It's a
change.
pretty big water problem
Yeah, there was, I know we
on the
looked at
west side of the
this,
property.
we looked at this condition at the previous approval, and I haven't re-looked at it, so I have to go back to my notes.
But that comment may change, John. Right now, it's based on you guys not replacing more than 50% of the roof system. The drawing you have now, based on your interior alteration permit that you applied for, doesn't require drainage. If
So
you
the-
replace more than 50% of the roof system, We're gonna have another conversation, not at this board, but at the building department level.
Yeah, we can have that conversation at the building department level. This approval did not include the barn. The barn was a repair of the existing building as the way it was treated. So I think this addition was, once we were in the process with the house, we did adjust this swale to pick up that leader. If there's additional, if there's
That's
something.
what I recall. I recall
Yeah.
the swale. I know we had looked at a couple different things,
Right.
and that's what we came up with.
Right.
There's not many options there.
We're not,
It was an
re-
existing condition, I mean, it was.
we're not required to treat the existing impervious, and we're not expanding the existing impervious. So
In the
that's
manner
what.
that you applied for at this time.
Okay. Okay.
Ed always puts the footnote.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I don't think there certainly hasn't been any change in our drawings or the civil drawings in that area
Okay.
since you've last seen it and since the last
Okay.
approval. That's what I want to.
Because there were some modifications to the stormwater system on the on the east side of the barn. Because there were some issues about how that was being handled. And I think, and they were approved eventually, but I
Right.
think.
Yeah,
we
there
did
may have
discuss
been a
that.
discussion about it. Not going back to whenever that was in January, we could review that offline, but I just don't know what they are. I just know that from when we were last in front of you and approved, and the revisions that are in front of you today that are the result of the additional work that was done,
Needless
there
to
hasn't
say,
been any change in there.
The plastic flex pipe and the duct tape is being replaced.
Yes, right.
Any other comments? No, any comments from anyone in the public on this matter? No? All right, then I think, Mary Ann, you do have a resolution on this?
Whereas on November 7th, 2018, Tracy Calvin and Gordon Feely received site development plan approval to construct an addition to their house at 99 Bracebridge Lane and to enlarge an existing driveway, reconstruct a barn on the site and install related improvements. And whereas on April 24th, 2019, a stop work order was issued because the applicants commenced work without obtaining a building permit and because work they were doing on the site was not in compliance with the approved site development plan. And whereas in July 2019, the applicants applied to the planning board for modifications to the approved site plan, including tree removal and additional plantings and drainage piping. And whereas Hunt Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated July 1st listed several issues which were adequately addressed in a subsequent submission. And whereas Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made a number of suggestions, most of which were incorporated in the subsequent plan. It's a type 2 action. Resolved that the planning board approves the modifications to the previously approved site development plan approval, such modifications reflected in the drawings entitled, and then I list them. Subject to the following conditions. 1, all work must be done by a licensed contractor and landscaper. 2, Suzanne Nolan must be notified and be present on site during staging, construction, and landscape installation, and must approve all landscaping work. And 3, that note 12 on drawing 8.012 should be modified to replace the term root growth stimulator with canvas static growth regulator, as recommended by Malcolm McBurney, the village consulting arborist, in his letter dated August 2nd, 2019.
Any comments from any of the board members? Can I have a motion to approve? Second. All in favor? Aye. So here you go, that consultants or licensed persons have to be out there doing the work. Okay, thank you. Next item is 2019-18, Judd and Catherine Clark, Sir, 65 North Broadway.
Hello, Obed Abdullah from Hudson Engineering, on behalf of our clients for 65 North Broadway. Since the last meeting, we've revised the layout of the wall so that the stairs are closer to this side, and revised it so instead of having a double wall here, we have a single wall. We've also provided elevation view from the neighboring property. The wall height is roughly 4 feet up until this point, and then it slowly drops down to about 3 feet or so, and continues along back to this point, again, no higher than 4 feet. The grading's down to about 5% roughly from the patio to this contour before it grades out and meets grade below the wall. And we've done it to maintain or preserve these trees as best as possible.
I think you also provided some information on the amount of fill that needs to be
Yeah,
brought onto the
roughly
site,
510 cubic yards.
which 510 cubic yards totals out to, I started breaking it down, that's 13,788 cubic feet. So if you took a 10,000 square foot lot that was totally level, and you put that fill on there, you'd be raising the lot by about 15 inches over across the entire lot. Which is quite a large amount of fill. As a matter of fact, I think also too, if you're looking at 20 cubic yard trucks bringing that fill in. 10 yard, well, if you go 10 yard, I was looking at 20 yard, bless you. I was looking at 20 yard trucks. The 20 yard truck, you're looking at 26 trips in at a minimum and 26 trips out. That's 52 trips into the property. So just to drop off the dirt. And then you're going to have either a spreader back there, you're going to have a bulldozer or something back there that's going to be spreading this all
I
out.
believe there were talks with the neighbor next door who's under construction to see if it's possible that the soil on their property, any excess soil, could be utilized on the property.
Well, I mean,
But at this time,
whether it is or it isn't, I mean, what you're showing here is that you're providing a track to come into the side of the property, on the
Neighbor's
on the
property.
south side of the property, right? And I think, again, it's,
May I approach?
let me just finish here. Let me just quote to you from the zoning ordinance. And this is duties of the planning board, section 224-70. And standards for approval of site plans, section C, number 12, and it says, the natural topography of the site should be preserved to the greatest extent practicable, and the use of cut and fill shall be minimized. When I look at this, you bring in 510 cubic yards. From what I understand, what you're trying to do is level off the backyard.
To some extent,
Correct?
yes.
I mean, you have about a 13% slope now, and you're bringing it up to about 5%. And you're going to need a variance because you want to continue 20 feet into the old Croton Aqueduct buffer
Yeah,
and provide fill in there too.
that used to be the typical standard for setback from the buffer, but I believe for subdivisions, they revised it to 50 feet. So we're looking to see if the zoning will allow
it's
it.
approved at 50 feet.
It's 50 feet is the buffer now, what's required. And my point is, so when I start doing some calculations, you're going to grade out to probably about a 5% slope until you get to the old Croton Aqueduct buffer. And then when you get to the old Croton Aqueduct buffer, you end up creating slopes that are between 15 and 25%, which is worse than what's there now. So I don't understand why you would be bringing, and let me just finish. So your calculation of this, when you calculate that out, it's about 237 cubic yards that would be going into the old Croton Aqueduct buffer area. That's about 45% of the fill that you want to bring onto the site. So you're going to take a 13% slope and make it into a 15 to 25% slope. And you're going to need a variance to do that. And you're saying that you want to try and level off the property, but yet you're making it less usable and creating steep slopes that is not what the village wants to do.
The areas that are being graded out here are more to limit the heights of the walls to 4 feet, since, Irvington prefers walls of 4 feet or lower. Otherwise, we could have graded out and filled out that area. And that area in general, the contours are relatively close, and compared to the impact that this would have, of slowing down runoff in this area, the impact from this area would likely be very minimal in comparison.
Yeah, but you're still creating steep slopes where you don't have a steep slope. And you're also creating, well, what I see is you're building a wall on the south side of the property, on the west side of the property, and the north side. So basically, you have to create walls to be able to fill this area in. Right?
However,
And-
after construction's done here, it may very well be higher level on this property compared to here.
Well, it isn't now. It's about, matter of fact, it's about 4 or 5 feet higher. What you're proposing is about 4 or 5 feet higher than what the existing slope is on that property
Conditions
shown
on-
on the
Yeah, on the survey.
on the
But
survey.
when the survey was checking compared to what the site looks like now, this area is actually quite a bit higher than this side of the property.
I don't know, I mean, I'm going with what you're showing on the plan. And the same thing on the north side, I think for about first 20 or 30 feet, you're running about the same height as, the same topography as the property to the north, but then you start filling in, and you end up being about 2 feet higher than the actual topography on the site to the north. So you're really not, I mean, you said you're gonna create, you know, slopes that are similar to what exists out there, but I don't see that you really are.
Well, again, most of the grading is leveled out here. If you're playing catch-up to get a 4-foot high maximum, you're gonna have to have a steeper area in a corner. We can make this area even steeper, but
Well-
it would raise the wall heights.
Well, what you could do is you could cut back 20 feet and not have any steep slopes.
That's where we're,
You're
again,
gonna create steep slopes, which is not what your client is trying to do. You're trying to level off the property. So why would you go out there and bring in another 237 cubic yards of fill to create steep slopes? When you could bring in less fill, which would be less expensive, you could bring the wall farther back, you wouldn't need a variance for the OCA, and the client would end up with a flat yard where he wants the flat yard.
the aim was to maximize the amount of area they could get.
But you're not getting, but what are you maximizing? You're getting a
Maximizing up
25%
until-
slope. What are you gonna use it for?
After this point, though,
But that's in the OCA buffer, so why, you're not gaining anything by adding 237 cubic yards of fill. That's my point,
But if you
in
were to
terms of a
put-
flat backyard.
if we were to put a wall right against the buffer, how much leeway would we have as far as height?
Pardon me?
How much leeway would we have as far as height?
You'd have to tell me that, you're the engineer, you'll have to figure out what it
Obviously, it
is.
would be higher, though, but what would be acceptable to planning board?
You'd have, you know, we're back to Riverview Road, okay? And you're gonna have to show us what it would take to create that wall at that at that distance from the OCA. And that's my point. I open up any comments from
Yeah.
any board members.
The south wall is on the property line,
Yes.
and the silt fence stops on, there's no silt protection during the construction of the wall on the other person's property. It's downhill.
We'd have to, we can add that on there again, but
And
that's,
and my other, I mean, you have on the north side, the wall is set back from the property line and you have screening. I mean, why isn't it the wall on the south side set back so you could have screening?
because it would limit the yard area, and we're expecting after construction is done that the wall may very well not be acquired.
But you don't know that. I mean, we're going with this, you're coming in with a site plan that you're asking to be approved. We can't go with maybe this will happen. We gotta go with this is what it is.
At this point, we're looking for referral to zoning first to see what their feedback would be. Because if they refuse this outright, then any changes we
Like I
make.
say, if you want to go, well, my point of view is you want to go to the ZBA, take it to the ZBA, but the recommendation you're going to get from this board is that we think it's a lot of useless fill that's being put on the property because it's creating steep slopes that's not usable. And the idea, and I just read to you what it says in the zoning ordinance. And I can also say, here, let's go to the section on the ZBA, what the ZBA is going to be looking at also.
While he's looking for that, is that the access along the south side of the building to get trucks back there?
It's going to be from essentially this
Oh,
way while they're
okay.
working. They'd start on this side, and this would be the last
Okay,
stop.
and why is, you got an, I could be wrong, but it looks like you have an aluminum fence that runs all the way through the buffer zone?
There's a chain link fence right along the buffer.
That's there now?
Yes.
Oh, I thought I read that there's a new aluminum fence.
Well, there is this
They're
proposed
proposing to
aluminum
replace it,
fence,
yeah.
which according to your plan, is actually going through the trunk of one of the trees that's out
It
there
looks like.
and going through the tree protection areas of the other two trees. Because there are a lot of things, and I don't even want to get into the minor points. I think the major point is the amount of fill that's being brought in here and whether it's really necessary. And whether it accomplishes what the goal is here, which is to make a flat backyard. I don't see that it does in that last 20 feet. Any comments from,
Yeah, I think the south wall needs to be pushed in so you have a buffer area. I think, I don't know if anybody else feels that.
And our approach?
Sure, and then one other, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect on the impact of the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood district, but whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. And I think what I'm saying is you can accomplish what you want to do without putting 237 cubic yards of fill and creating steep slopes where there are no steep slopes, which I think is counterproductive and counter to what the zoning ordinance is demanding and requesting that the planning board do in its review. Do you want to speak?
Sure.
Yeah, you should introduce yourself and speak.
Hello, my name is Judd Harsher, 65 North Broadway. Is it okay if I present a photo of the backyard?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. This is a picture of the backyard where I'm standing at the southeast corner of the property. Sure. And I'm looking east. That 2x4 what I just put into the ground, and what I did was I just measured 4 feet up and then drew a line over to the twin sycamore tree. The property to the south, which is 51 North Broadway, is being developed by Frank Racanelli. First of all, the question about accessing, which is correct, I estimated about 25 trucks. You said 26, that's correct. We have permission from the owner, Frank, go through his property, which is under construction, to access our backyard. So while on the plan it does have sort of a site approval here for accessing, it is not our plan to go on our property with the trucks over the roots of the sycamore tree, the twin sycamore tree, rather to use 51 North Broadway to have this work done. The other question as far as 30 feet versus 20 feet, or I'm sorry, 30 feet versus 50 feet. The south property, the way it is now with the soil elevation, there is some runoff that's coming onto our property. There is a fence there now, but this wall will help, create a buffer, between the two properties. I've discussed the plans and reviewed them with the owner of 51 North Broadway. He's okay with a wall going to the property line of 51 North Broadway.
Which one is 51 North Broadway?
51 North Broadway is
No, to the south.
to the south, yes. Yeah, it's this house here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Racanelli.
Frank Racanelli, yes, yeah. To address the question of a steel fence and an aluminum fence and going through a tree, there currently is a steel fence, I would say, on the property line, which is very near some black walnut trees. The plan that we're proposing is to remove the steel fence and then do a setback of, I believe it's like 5 or 6 feet from the property line, which would then allow us to put in, some shrubbery and greenery and butterfly bushes and so forth in between the aluminum fence, 6-foot aluminum fence, and our property line, which just visually gives something nice. One of the other reasons, just we are an active family in Irvington, family of 4. We love our backyard. We love badminton, being active. Having a yard and having, yes, that extra 20 feet would add, in my opinion, to just the house and what it gives, and a nice yard, and a nice way to currently access the aqueduct. Part of this is to have in the center of the yard the plan some bluestone steps that are about 4 feet wide, stepping down into the lower part of the yard, which is the 30 feet of the aqueduct, and the slope there remains unchanged. So we're proposing a wall 4 feet at the 30 feet, but then the area from 30 feet to the property line, the only thing that's changing there is not the slope, but the aluminum fence and the plantings. I hope that helps provide a little bit more insight on the proposed. And yes, we understand that to do this, we would need a variance from the zoning board. Thank you.
Any comments?
Your narrative needs to be reflected, though, that the western fence, you say, is going to be set back from the trees with plantings, that your drawings have to reflect up there.
Yeah. Okay.
And you said, you mentioned in the narrative of plantings on the west side of the fence.
Yes.
What about my comment that the south wall is right on the property line as opposed to the north wall, which is set back so you can have plantings?
This wall being on the property line.
Yes. What's your thought on that the wall is on the property line as opposed to set back so that there could be plantings?
Okay. I've reviewed this with the owner, Frank, of 51 North Broadway. He hasn't objected to the plan of where the wall is. I've seen, a layout of his plan for landscaping and so forth. But that was, he's okay with it being on the property line.
He's not going to live there.
Okay.
And you need to get his permission to extend the silt fence over onto his property because your construction ends the silt fence ends at the construction of the wall.
Okay.
And it looks like, you said the drainage comes on your property, but to my looking at the contours, it looks like it's going to the south and west, not to the north.
Yeah.
True, but that's not the way the water flows right now.
It flows uphill.
Well, I mean, as Caesar says, and when I
It
was out
looks,
there...
it looks like the contours, I don't know, maybe different.
When I was out there on the Old Croton Aqueduct too, it looked like there was water between Old Croton Aqueduct and maybe about the first 5 or 10. It was all running in a southwest direction.
True. The water there's a stream right over in this area, and the water the used to sort of all flow here.
Right.
And
That's what the topo looks like.
Correct. More recently, the water has sort of been flowing to this part of the yard and then pooling up in here.
That might be due to the construction on Mr. Reckonell.
Yeah, maybe some.
So the topo needs to be reflected. And you should get permission, do we have something in writing that?
We would need for them to remove the proposed construction access and us work with that. They have to provide another one just to show us that we need documentation from the owner of the property they're entering and exiting.
Yeah.
Just a little map of how. Okay.
Hudson Engineer knows what to do.
Okay.
We can't have, it's one or the other. If you can't document the other, it has to be this one.
And if you're gonna, and you still need permission to put the silt fence out onto the other property, because the wall, if it stays on the property line, the silt fence ends where the wall construction is, so it's gonna go right around the existing. The way it is now, with the flow going to the southwest, it's gonna go right around the southern end of that silt fence.
Sheila, do you have any comments? Again, Mr. Haxer, I think the issue for me is that...
That's the main issue, I guess, your issue.
Yeah, the amount of fill that's being brought in that is not providing you with a flat backyard. And it's creating, you want to then go for a variance for something, you're saying that you want a flat backyard, but yet you're creating slopes that are excessive. They are steeper slopes than are out there now. So it's not going to be used, if you think your backyard is not usable now because it's too sloping, it's going to be worse in the last 20 feet
once you're done with this project. You're gonna, if your slope is like this, you're gonna have a slope like this. You're not gonna be able to use it. So that's my point. You're bringing in 45% of the fill is going into an area that's not gonna be usable. Whereas you could pull that wall back, not require a variance, and still have a flat backyard. And save yourself the cost of 237 cubic yards of fill to bring it in, and you reduce the amount of wall that you need. And you do less environmental impact than what's being proposed here. And again, that's what I, as the chairman, and I think my colleagues here on the board are concerned about. Okay?
Noted.
And so I think that's what should be looked at. What would it look like if you pulled that back 20 feet and you went right to the OCA boundary, if that's what you want to do? And then what does that wall look like? And again, too, I think, again, as Caesar was pointing out with regard to that steel fence should be all the way at the end of your property, because you're going to be doing all kinds of work in the backyard there. And to put it 2 or 3 feet away from the wall, how are the guys going to build a wall when you've got a silt fence right there? I mean, you've got to determine what your limits. As far as I'm concerned, your limits of disturbance are all the way to the west property line, because you're going to be putting a fence in back there. You're proposing a fence. You're proposing all kinds of landscaping there. So you've got to take a look at that. Again, these are the minor issues. One that's not so minor is the wall on the north side of the property that's being proposed. I think our landscape architect brought it up also, that you're in essence creating a tree well that is, I don't know, probably about 60 feet long. And what damage are you doing to the roots of those existing trees back there that are between your property and the Villa Lolaro property? So I think this project, as far as I'm concerned, is more than an engineering project, is a landscape architecture project. And you really need to get somebody with landscape architecture background in here to take a look at this proposal and see what can be done.
Permission to provide one more? This is a 3D schematic of the proposal. And just in reference, and if you could help me with the elevation, changes, but the slope that you're referring to, that where you say I'm creating more slope, I believe it is just in one corner. If you could help out just with like the 162, the right.
Well, I didn't see it as more just in one corner. I see even here. I think over here it would be the southwest corner. You're creating slopes of close to 25%. Even in the northwest corner, you're still creating slopes that are about 15% in that last 20 feet. Because you're going from, you got a spot elevation out here of about 162, 163 feet, and you're dropping down to 160 feet within just very short distance in there. So again, you're creating steep slopes across the...
I mean, there are steep slopes on the property that start.
But they're not 15 to 25%, they're 13%. You're trying to reduce that. Again, you're creating greater slopes than are there. It doesn't make any sense to me if you want to level off the backyard to create steep slopes.
Again, the aim is to limit the height of the walls
Right.
rather than...
Look, see what the wall comes out to. If you're going to be 50 feet away and you're going to landscape back there and buffer it from the aqueduct, that may be okay. But that's a lot less of a problem for me than creating steep slopes where there aren't steep slopes.
What's to the west on the other side of the property?
Right here?
On the other side of the aqueduct, I'm sorry. What's to the west?
There are single-family homes on that side, and they're not visible, really.
Are they lower than the aqueduct?
Yes.
I mean, traditionally, they generally are lower.
Directly across.
The distance from the aqueduct.
Yeah, directly.
So I'm not too sure the height of the wall would be that much of a concern.
Directly across is a tennis court.
And just from the point of view of your interest and concern about the height of the wall, to the west is the aqueduct and sunken houses. Nobody's going to see it until we put shrubs there. I'm not too sure the height of the, at least from my point of view. The height of the wall is less of a concern than the slopes.
And I think...
Because looking west, there's not much there to be impacted.
And I think also Racanelli on his property, I believe there's a wall that he's building that's under construction now, and I think, Ed, you said that is not within the 50-foot OCA buffer.
He's not finished work is not proposed in the 50-foot buffer.
Again, I think you're coming closer than your neighbors to the aqueduct, and I think the idea of the buffer was to maintain that open space area and the field, because it's a state park, and you want to try and maintain that open space. Okay?
So are we able to seek a variance with?
Well, if you want to go for a variance, but I'm just telling you, you're going to get a negative recommendation from this board if you go. So you can take your chances if you want to do that.
I understand. Thank you.
Just, when you come back next time, you also have to legalize 215 feet of the deck as part of this project, because when you go to the zoning board, have to include it. So if you can, for starts, let's include the coverage in this plan, and understand if you go further, you'll need structural plans for that. Or that's step 3. So just include it. All the coverages work, although you're over a lot. They were all allowable at the time, except for the 215 square feet of the deck that got increased sometime.
You need that with the variance for the walls anyways now?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
The 215 feet of it is a legalization. Just in case, when you get there, they don't give you that.
Okay.
You have, if you don't put it on, then the deck has to come down too.
Gotcha.
I don't want to see that.
Is it the deck or?
It's the patio.
215 square feet of the deck, or it's shown to be deck on the plan, so I don't know.
It's
It's a patio under deck.
Oh, that's easy then.
Yeah,
Okay, but
it's like pavers under the steps.
Can you correct that on your
It was called
application?
out as patio and deck.
It's, okay, put a line, it is important.
Pat, can I just add one thing? I just want to make sure that everybody understands. I know the board does, that they have standards that are separate from the ZBA standards. The planning board has different standards, and they still do have what Pat read in the very beginning about this, about respecting the existing topography and not creating steep slopes. So they still have, just be aware that they still have that standard to apply.
I understand it's a process.
Okay.
And the buffer zone, you get on a slippery slope of exceeding the buffer zone, and then eventually there's no buffer zone.
Right. And again, I don't think you're making a good case as to why you want to go into the buffer zone when your goal is to create a flat backyard and you're creating steep slopes within the OCA buffer.
Isn't a ZBA variance predicated on a hardship?
That's one of the items to be looked at. There are five
Well,
items.
there's particular standards, but the old hardship standard, it's sort of It's kind of incorporated in the standards, but that classic hardship standard was thrown out years ago and modified by the standards that are laid out in they're in our zoning code. They're also in the state village law, which binds the zoning board.
The area variances, these are the 5 items that against variance. If there was a court case in New York State and a judge made a ruling, if these are the items that should be looked at, and then it was incorporated into village and town law. And these are the 5 items that are supposed to be looked at. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood, or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. In determining whether an area variance is substantial, the Board of Appeals should take into account the existing conditions in the immediate neighborhood. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of an area variance.
Okay. Think about those 5 things.
But if you decide to go, as I said, you decide to go for the variance at this point, I said this board will send a memo to the ZBA with its recommendations with regard to what we discussed here tonight. Okay? Any other comments? Any comments from, sorry, from anybody in the audience on this matter? Any other comments from the board members? I think that's it for now. Also, there were a number of items from our landscape architect and from the engineers. I guess those should be addressed also, part of your next submission. Okay?
And clean up that west fence and
Gotcha.
Next item is, next item is 2019-13 Terry Cohen Tulin, 107 Harriman Road.
Here all night. Ben Abdullah again from Hudson Engineering. With regard to the plan that you guys saw last time, we've reduced the plan to nothing more than the deck. The fence will not be going in at this time. At this point, we're looking to go forward with the deck and kind of go from there. There's not really much to the plan. The rest of the comments are relatively minor. There are more applications that go to building. One of them is an elevation that's called out here. I don't know if you want.
Yeah, where's the floodplain? I didn't see.
This is a high water mark, and this bit varies from
Where's
178 to 176.5.
From that's a 100-year floodplain?
That's from what the surveyor picked up. On FEMA, I think there's no specific elevation set. It goes from 160 on the far left side to 188 on the far right,
So that's
meaning we're
the FEMA
interpolating.
floodplain.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, as you called out, that's,
Gotcha.
I'm sure it's clear that that's what that is, because, to me, I just thought it was the watermark, the high watermark.
It's the watermark, but I think based on the FEMA flood maps, which we looked at earlier, interpolating it comes out to roughly the same number. I'm assuming what he picks up is going to be more accurate than interpolation.
So then you just gotta fill out all the forms.
Yep. I think those were submitted in the first submission. We'll get them to you guys again. But
No.
I was gonna say, I don't think
because we have them completed. I saw them, and I think they said they were in the first submission, but we can submit them again, not a problem.
No, they're not. I have
Yeah,
volumes.
because usually.
The first one?
If they are, we usually write that they've been submitted and they'll be.
No problem. We can resubmit.
if I recollect, the deck is elevated, so there's no real, other than the column, no real taking of the floodplain.
Correct, yes.
But it still needs to go through the paperwork. Okay.
Any other comments? Any comments from anyone in the audience on this matter? No?
Hand back there.
It's
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
property.
Oh, I have Martin speak on the microphone, if you're gonna speak.
The
Just take the microphone and identify yourself, please.
Terry Cohen, 107 Harriman. The deck is just off the ground, because that was the easier way to do it. So I just want to make sure you understand that
Right.
we revised it to do it that way.
Right, correct, yes, I think that's what Mr. Manfredi was saying, that we do. So you just have to fill out the paperwork, submit that, and I don't think there are any comments from any of the members on the board on this matter.
Can we get conditional approval?
No, I think you're gonna have to
Didn't put in the application.
get the applications.
Okay.
Yeah. And then next month, that's all done, should be okay. All right?
Sorry, do we have to do this again?
Yes, you'll have to come to this meeting again, you'll have to submit all the forms that are required for, what, the floodplain and for the wetland.
Water course.
Water course.
It's just a formality, because the stream is in your backyard so close to the property.
So when is this being approved?
It's not in a condition to be approved tonight, but it's well on its way. We had a very good meeting tonight.
So when's the next meeting?
First Wednesday of
First Wednesday
October.
of October.
Any other comments? No. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Next item is 2019-21 Diana Rubin and Alexander Roos, 3 Hillside Terrace.
So the other here, Hudson Engineering, regarding 3 Hillside. We're here before you for the, recommendation to zoning board for legalization of a walkway. The area that's originally to the side of the building was a gravel area, and the area was paved into a walkway, which puts them over the coverage. They're over coverage regardless in the pre-existing condition on the site. So we're looking for a referral to zoning for a coverage variance.
When was the paving put in? By the current owner or previous?
It was a
It's
gravel
under
area.
violation.
Excuse me?
It's under a violation.
Okay, so it was the current owner,
Correct.
coverage, okay.
Any other comments from any board members? No, any comments from anyone in the public? I guess you can go to the ZBA with this then at this point, and then we'll see you next month for site plan approval. Okay.
Just confirm with the air conditioner for the coverage.
Gotcha. I'll check. I think they're in there, though, the AC pads on the left side.
I didn't see it in the.
They're revised, I sent you the revised copy. I'm not sure if it was on there before or not, but I'll make sure you get the latest copy.
What is the one that was submitted?
I couldn't tell you. I know the changes, the plan, this current plan was revised, but check.
Get them to us so we can write the denial. Email.
Is there papers with this?
Sorry, say again?
Was there any reason why?
It was originally a gravel area. It became tricky to walk over gravel, so it made it easier to just pave it over. It was a gravel area all along the side of the property.
Okay.
Can I come up? It's me.
No? You're good.
I put it in.
Oh, you think I'm coming out?
I think that's it for that item today.
Great, thank you.
You finished?
Yeah, one more.
Again?
No more.
I got the last one now, so
Oh, okay.
get a break.
Next item is 2019-20, Laura Gray and Robert Honstein, 2 Barney Park.
John Moore, Ferguson, Malone Architecture. This is a project for a small addition to an existing house in Barney Park. We are proposing to remove an existing covered enclosed porch and replace it with a solarium-type room on the same side of the building. Just quickly, I'll start. Doesn't work very well. The existing building has an enclosed porch on the front side, on the south side, closer to the street. What we're proposing to do. And what we're proposing to do is remove that porch and add a solarium family room area in this area. So if we look at
This is the floor.
if we go back to the proposed site plan, we're seeing the existing porch was in this area here. An addition of approximately the same square footage is being proposed, a one-story addition in this area. So the existing porch extended beyond the front yard setback. This new is being showed pulled back into the setback. The stormwater associated, even though there's not an increase in impervious, we're going to treat the stormwater associated with the new addition as if it were new, because it is new. There's a few other changes to the building, modifications to the entrances and stuff like that, and patio. The coverage amount is being reduced slightly, and so is the FAR amount. I see that we had a comment about the FAR. If you have a moment, I just wanted to review that, because I think we do have the porch shown in there.
Screened in, or is it?
Is the porch existing, screened in, or?
It's existing, enclosed with glass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it was certainly a porch, but it's glass enclosed. It doesn't have
If
a
it's screened
foundation.
in, it's not FAR. If it's glass in, it is FAR.
Yeah, it's glass.
So you're either increasing it or not increasing it.
Right. Yeah, no, it's glass and it's,
By like 22%.
right, it's a slight decrease, very slight decrease. So, in terms of the other comments, that was what your comment then was about the FAR, just to confirm what it is, right? Okay. Scale information, we give you a neighborhood analysis for it next meeting. View preservation overlay.
I think you should do something with that, John, because
Yeah, I'm just trying
you're
to-
creating a solid building now, and you're also putting a balustrade, it looked like, on top of this addition, which,
And it's wider this way than the other
Okay,
one was.
so you-
So I'll try to get some images
Right.
from this side
Right,
and just see if there's any,
looking
okay. There may, because of where, how low it is in this one, so there may be no impact, but show me, I'll get something. The drain inlet that you were mentioning in item 5, I just want to make sure I understand which one that is. And that's, now I know what you're complaining about. It's not our drawing. Now I know what you're complaining about. It's not our drawing. I got you.
The scale?
Yeah, I got it. I see it now. No, but the drain out, is that the one,
The details of the,
is it, you're saying the proposed drain
oh
inlet
yeah,
may
in
collect?
that corner.
Is it this side?
Yeah.
Yes, up there, okay. And stair drain, I think I understand that one.
a couple of questions for you. There were 2 trees that were shown being taken down on the east property line, and it said they were being taken down under a separate permit. Have they already been taken down?
They have not. The neighbor asked them to remove it. They're afraid of this tree, so the neighbor asked them to remove it. The head arborist came out and the arborist indicated these 2. So that is a process that they've already been to the tree commission about and had pursued it already. I
Well,
think
they
that-
did pursue.
But they haven't taken them down. They
But
have
they
the
got a
approval.
permit?
They have approval and permit to do it. So we just indicated here that that's happening. I'm not sure it's their, it wasn't really their wish to take them down. It was to satisfy the neighbor's concern about the safety of
The tree commission find that they were not in good condition. The arborist found
Yeah,
that they weren't in good
they must
condition.
have found that it was reasonable to take them down.
Which was, can you provide a copy of the decision by the tree commission?
And the mitigation or whatever they
Yeah.
proposed.
The remediation.
Yeah, we can do that.
And then also, where you show your access to the rear of the property and the anti-tracking entrance, you show your limits of disturbance and the tracking area going through the tree protection for the tree in the northeast corner of the property. I think that should be,
right here.
should be correct, yeah. Change that. And the other thing too, John, with this rain garden, I mean, I know the rain garden sounds like a nice idea and, environmentally a good thing, but I think my concern would be what happens when this property is sold, somebody else moves in and they decide, well, what is this depression in the ground here?
Right. And whether it survives.
Yes. And while it sounds like a good idea, maybe it would be better just to put some underground sort of storage in there.
I think the reason that drove the rain garden was they did test pits and found rock very high, which I was sort of surprised. It didn't, Barney Park doesn't really seem like the place for it. So rather, it seemed like the right solution, given that there would be rock removal associated with, well, actually, rock, you can't remove it, you may not have perk below it, so.
Drill holes.
Drill holes. Make a pool.
Well, the rain garden wouldn't perk them very much either.
Well, I think
If you're trying to look up in
what you end up doing with
the plant.
the rain garden, though, the storage is sort of more of a surface storage, and then it finds its way down, as opposed to doing, the plants take it and use it.
The soil to the voids in the soil.
Yeah, sort of.
And also, how is the overflow from the rain garden going to be handled?
We haven't, I don't think it's addressed on here at all, so.
Essentially, it would just sheet flow towards the roadway. It's the direction it's going now, and they're not really increasing it much,
Right.
but it's something.
I mean, we could look and see what's appropriate. I was hoping that we wouldn't have an overflow associated with that, because of what the amount of water that's going to it is only related to that one roof.
Well, how is the screened porch, how's the runoff from that being handled now?
Coming out, sheet flowing into the street. So this we're seeing as an improved, if you're taking that same amount of runoff that was associated with this is now just coming off this roof and sheet flowing down the hill. So this would be at least give it a chance to infiltrate before it goes over. Well, in most cases, it'll infiltrate, and then in the big storm, it'll go.
And I think the other thing is just to maybe just look at the limits of disturbance on here too, that you're showing. I mean, that finger that comes around the front of the
Yeah, well, that's for
the house,
yeah.
you know, it just seems kind of difficult.
Oh, well, that's to
Yes.
pull out this, this walkway that's associated with the porch is being pulled out, because there wouldn't be access from that side. We still need to show that as disturbance.
Yes, but maybe
Yeah.
it should be a little wider there.
Are you just picking up the thing?
They're loose laid, they're just loose laid stones.
Oh.
What is it, an item underneath?
Oh, no, this is
There's dirt,
old school.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
There's no concrete or anything.
No, just loose laid stones.
yeah, so it's still count.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any comments from any of the board members?
Could you go back to the other page?
The
Original.
site.
Yeah. G12. Yeah, on the west side, that's a new patio?
This is,
Yeah, and it's out of the, what appears to be the building envelope of, is that, is there a concern that the patio, it's a new patio, correct?
This is a new patio.
Yeah, and it's too close to the property line, is that a concern?
Patios, I don't think is counted
Oh, okay.
towards,
All right.
towards the setback. I don't think.
Is there any thoughts for some plantings around the new building?
We haven't shown any additional planting. I think they're, you know, the area, what you're seeing is the trees associated with it. There are, you know, there's a fence along the back here. It is pretty well planted. Is there a concern about a specific screening that?
Yeah, just a thought.
Yeah.
I'm not that concerned, but you know, it looks kind of like a sore thumb sticking out there.
Well, there are two recommendations from our landscape architect too. The size and condition of tree number 4 should be confirmed as it appears healthy and larger than identified on the drawings. The rain garden location should be modified to avoid the root protection zone. And then also 2, provide a plant list for the rain garden.
Right, so we have to think ahead of plans for the rain garden.
So just take a look at those comments.
And what about the frame building in the, in the southeast corner? That's existing and right on the pre-existing bad thing?
Can you say that again?
The frame building.
The outbuilding.
They're on the outbuilding. Pre-existing. Reflected in the old green brick card from 1950. Yeah, it's 304 or something like that.
No, take it down.
It's doing that. It's going to take itself.
That's gonna take itself down.
Any comments, any further comments from the board? No, any comments from anyone in the audience on this matter? I think then you should address the comments that were raised tonight.
Okay.
See you next month.
Okay, thank you.
Gregory's office wants to call to, just, because it's all stormwater.
Yeah. Do you want to go to ZBA?
That would be great, yeah.
Why don't you ask?
Oh, can we go to ZBA?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Right, and, yeah, yeah, we're okay with that.
All right, great.
I don't know if you need, did you need the photo of the sign? Does anybody collect that? Sarah?
And the last item is 2019-20 Laura Gray and Lot, I'm sorry, wrong one. 2019-19 Jackson Striano LLC, 16 North Astor.
Yes. So I'm Brandon Stewart, representing Michael Lewis Architects and the owner at 16 North Astor, Julia Steinmetz, who's partner and owner of Jackson Striano LLC. She's here with us. And later we'll hear again from our intrepid engineer, Ubada Abdullah of Hudson Engineering. You may recognize this project. It was before the board several times a couple of years ago. And if it's helpful later, I can walk you through the major differences between the previous project and what's being proposed now. Just to give you a refresher, the existing building, here you can see a photo of it in 1857 from the train station. The front portion of the building is 3 stories. And that's what you see on the facade here. And then in the rear, it's currently a two-story frame building. What is being proposed is the owner bought it in hopes of converting the third story in the front into her own residence, and then adding another dwelling unit on the second floor and dividing up the rest of the building into commercial spaces. One of the big challenges with the site is how the building is fairly buried in the hillside. So once you move back from the street into the building, it gets dark very fast on the first and second level. So one of the things we're trying to do is to demolition portions of the rear of the building, of the existing roof, and sink them down to 2 different levels to create 2 garden patios in the rear of the building. And also have a series of skylights, which you'll see, to bring light into the first floor commercial spaces. So here, just floor by floor, on the first floor, we're proposing a legal parking space and a second half parking space that would require a variance since it's in tandem. The idea is that this whole parking area would be for the exclusive use of the owner above, of the owner of the building, in hopes that the 2 parking spots would work in that sense. And then here we have 4 other commercial spaces on this floor. The whole building is also being brought up to full ADA compliance. There's an elevator that services the residential and commercial areas of the building. On the second floor, you can see the first of the levels that I mentioned, these garden patios, and a series of skylights that bring light down into the lower level. And here's the 1-bedroom dwelling unit on the second floor, 2 more commercial spaces. And on the third floor, you have the dwelling unit at the top with its own garden patio as well. And then you can see we're proposing a full restoration of the facade, which is in remarkably good shape. Both the pilasters on the front and the cornices and even the window details are in very good shape. The idea is to replace the windows in their existing rough openings, bring the whole building up to code with regards to energy codes, and as I mentioned, egress. And looking through Hans' comments from this morning, we're glad to see that seems like their major comments align right with ours, which are to figure out really what's going on with the level changes and how they relate to the surrounding properties. We've had one conversation, or a couple conversations with the neighbor to the north, who I believe is here with us tonight, trying to figure out what the nature of this barrier is, and how it maintains privacy from her garden patio and our proposed garden patios. You may know that there's currently a demo permit for the interior work that's been pulled and is currently underway now, which has been very helpful. On a daily basis, we're getting more information about the heights of the existing masonry walls and the party walls and existing drainage and everything else. So as that all comes to light, our hope is that by the next planning board submittal, we can have all of that detail provided. Also worth mentioning, in this rear corner of the building, you probably noticed there's an existing egress easement that's spelled out in the deed that was hammered out when the building to the south was constructed in 2010. So we will provide documentation on that egress easement that was requested. There's also a drainage easement that's provided. There's a downspout at that corner that leads into a drainage pipe that runs to the south and eventually towards the river. Our hope is, and Ubada Abdallah will address this more, is to route the majority of the runoff in the rear area to that existing drainage easement. And there's another drainage pipe at this corner on the north that currently drains the third floor roof. And so in general terms, the third floor roof runoff is maintained heading to that north drainage pipe, and all of the improvements areas in the back are heading to a system that Ubada will describe that eventually finds its way to the drainage easement on the south. And I guess I'll turn the time to Ubada.
Before it comes up, you're talking about the impact to the north.
Yes.
I was interested in, when you talk about the visual for the person, of the skylights, are they going to be a higher elevation than the existing roof line? Is the next neighbor looking down at the skylights, looking up at the skylights? I mean, you said you're going to cover it, so I would be most concerned with that.
Yep. In general terms, this is the highest level is obviously the roof of the third floor.
Right.
Then this comes next. Then this skylight barrier, we're imagining it as also a barrier between these two garden patios.
Right.
So it will come up to somewhere between 4 and 6 feet from when you're standing on this patio. And to the neighbor, these patios currently we're showing at, they're about 5 feet lower than the neighbor to the north's garden patios. So that would make the skylight system roughly flush with grade in this area. And the wall here, we're finding more about it as demo unwraps over there. But
common wall?
No, this is completely on our property.
Okay.
It's right on the property line, the edge of it. And the idea is to generally keep it at the same height that it's at, despite the demolition that we're doing on our side of it. The idea is to maintain it, repair it, possibly reconstruct it if necessary, depending on the condition of it, to maintain so that basically from the neighbor to the north looking at our property doesn't change. There likely will be little change to the nature of that wall from her side.
I think what would be helpful is a couple of sections through their
Definitely.
neighbor's property into your property as it exists and what's being proposed.
Yep, and that's what we've started that diagram, particularly the section here looking that way, but responding to Han's comments, we'll be providing elevations of all 3 sides of that back area. And also a longitudinal section to show what happens at the rear of the property with the retaining wall in the rear.
Is there buildings on Buckout or post office?
Houses. The post office, I believe, is further to one side or the other. I don't recall. But behind us is either 1 or 2 residential properties. I guess Ubada can describe the stormwater, and then I'll pop back up.
Albert Abdullah again from Hudson Engineering. With regard to the stormwater, as Brendan mentioned, the second floor roof area all goes to roof leaders that downspout directly into a gutter, which then goes down through that drainage pipe going through the easement. We're proposing to put 2 13-25-gallon tanks to, again, go into the tanks, be stored there, and released similar to an attenuation gallery. But this one would be in the basement and actually accessible compared to underground due to limited area on the site.
So the idea would be to capture it and then to release it after the peak?
Yeah, it's a slower release compared to direct entry into the drain.
Or be an automatic release?
It's controlled because it's a 3.5-inch pipe compared to a 6-inch, which is what it was going into.
My only comment, I think, that you're preserving the building is a great idea. It's an important building to the historic district of the village of Irvington. The parking spaces, I believe the previous submission, the owners went to the Board of Trustees for an approval for the removal of a parking space on North Astor Street, right? And because they were providing 3 parking spaces in the first floor of the building, and now you're only providing 2 in their tandem spaces. So do they have to go back then to the Board of Trustees for an approval on this again?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Okay, and that was my understanding as well. Reading through the resolution, it says it's contingent on the 3 being provided.
Yeah.
So we figured we'd have to get that revised.
And also, just like somebody...
Yeah, one other thing. And the
There were three, but they were also three accessible, three directly accessible. So it's a different situation.
Yes,
It's not
that's what I
1, 2,
understand.
3, where there'd be, first of all, you're going down to two, and then secondly, one of them is tandem, and it's questionable, whether
Right.
it really ends up being used by two cars.
Yeah, I think that my concern here is that you're creating two residential units, and in essence, you really only have one indoor parking space, one parking space provided on the lot, because, again, as Mary's saying, it's a tandem space. So I would just want you or somebody to confirm that there is overnight parking permitted on North Astor Street, because if there's going to be somebody else living in one of those apartments, they're not going to be able to park on the site.
You're talking about these being available for 24-hour parking?
Somewhere on North Astor, that there's
So not
Overnight.
24-hour, overnight.
Overnight, right.
Yeah, not 20, yeah, overnight parking, so that a resident living in that one
Park
bedroom
there.
or the two-bedroom apartment has a place that they can park their car.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what the current regulations are on those spots along North Astor, but we can verify. Just to address the parking spaces that were provided before, under the previous submission, you may remember quite a few problems were encountered. The first floor is roughly at street level all the way back to here, and then it bumps up about 30 inches. I think they just poured because they must have encountered rock back there. And so previously, there was a whole system of underpinning of the existing foundation, demoing portions of that rear slab to provide the turning clearances, to make it more of a proper garage back there. It encountered several problems that would have impacted properties to the north, property to the south, and required a lot of structural work. Our reading of the minutes and of the home comments was that was becoming increasingly problematic as you reviewed it, to make that entire parking garage a reality. So that's part of why we've scaled that scope of work back to just provide the tandem parking at the front of the lot. But like you say, we'll probably need to go back to the Board of Trustees and also get clarification on these, so we'll do that.
Any comments? Jim?
My concern is once you start construction, what safety issues are you going to consider? Because that is a very heavy traffic walking path for residents, kids going to the park.
Yeah, we've actually had meetings on the sidewalk with the contractor and with the owner, and just in the course of 15 or 20 minutes, we can tell how many people use that sidewalk.
We've already had a preliminary meeting on that.
So there will be some maintenance and protection
I
of traffic
actually
and pedestrian.
forwarded him to the one that the neighbor had done,
Yeah.
the crosswalk, and gave him maybe something for that.
Good. Do you mean you've given that to Sariva, the contractor?
Yeah.
Oh, I know we have notes on here that you gave us about certain protections.
And that was just
That's
for
what you're
demolition.
talking about?
Yeah, that was for the
Okay.
demolition, but a more long-term proposal would be to provide a crosswalk temporarily,
Yep, okay,
similar to what the neighbor did when they did their project.
okay. We'll look into that. Yep.
Michael Lewis, architect. I think Brandon's covered it beautifully. The one thing I wanted to mention was, my understanding was that previously, taking into consideration the height of the backfill against the rear retaining walls, the buttresses there, and the age of this building, along with the retaining wall behind it and the age of the building to the north, made structural work at the foundation level, particularly serious chunks of excavation to drop the rear level of the first floor down to be level with the driveway entrance, are almost prohibitive. So the scheme that showed 3 parking spaces previously, it's great to have the 3 parking spaces, but I think it's approaching an impossibility in terms of gaining an approval on that basis.
Could I just clarify? Nobody's suggesting that was a better plan. The point was, before the trade-off was, we'll give up one street space for two inside. It just changed the weighing of it. Nobody, I hope I wasn't misunderstood
yeah, of
there.
course.
Nobody's suggesting that those 3 spaces were better.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. No, I wasn't inferring that. I just merely wanted to illuminate that it's not like, oh, we're choosing not to provide parking spaces because we don't want to or something. We don't see any possible way that we can provide them. That's all.
That's a trustee decision. I guess, they don't need a variance for that then, if they don't have the required parking, right?
No.
It's pre-existing.
It's pre-existing.
We're gonna add, we've asked for that. A report was done for the previous application, we asked for you to resubmit it.
Oh, for the parking analysis?
Parking.
I had a question. Maybe you missed it. We have it's spelled out in the chart. Was that sufficient?
No, give us the report that was given.
Oh, the previous one?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. We have
Just
that.
under the submission.
Okay, great.
Any other questions, comments from the board? No, any comments from anyone in the audience on this matter?
Hi, I'm Christina Lomolino, and I own the property immediately to the north of 16 North Astor. And as you probably know from walking in this area, these are 2 buildings that were built in the middle of the 1800s. And they're both at the property line. The buildings are perhaps not even a foot apart. So my initial response was to concern about vibration, demolition, and the power of the construction possibly damaging the south wall of my building. But I'm hopeful, having spoken with the architect, that sufficient precautions will be taken, and I'm relieved to hear that there is not a plan to excavate there. But nonetheless, this has to be approached with a great deal of care and a lot of precautions so as to not damage the neighboring buildings. They're really barely a foot apart. Another concern has to do with the backyard, both during the construction and afterwards. During the construction debris from the demolition that is going to occur at the rear of the property, it has to be done, obviously, in such a way that debris doesn't fall into the neighboring property. I don't know how that's actually accomplished, but it will have to be. The third concern had to do with privacy at the rear. Because we don't have, as yet, a north elevation or a section where we can see how the proposed construction will look when you're looking south from my building. It's really unclear as to how the levels will look. Particularly that you're now saying patio 1 and patio 2 would be below grade, but that the structure holding the skylights would be above grade. And also there's another commercial space that has a doorway into one of the patios.
Correct.
And how will that building appear when looking south? So I look forward to seeing those drawings, but I did want to come here and just express some of these concerns to everyone here. The final thing is parking. As everyone knows, this is a very sensitive issue in the downtown area in the historic district. And we've lost quite a few parking spaces over the last several years. The building on the corner, Main Street, got a curb cut and now has a driveway. The yogurt shop also has some of the spots currently that are attached to it that had been used officially or unofficially as public parking spaces in the past. And I'm also aware that the curb cut for 16 North Astor was restored recently. And I would just ask this board to share the concerns of the residents of that area, who find parking very tough. That's it.
Thank you.
Note that we asked for, and he said he's gonna provide the
Yes.
the visuals from the north to south,
Hmm.
especially the skyline.
Yeah, and just to give you a preview of it, it likely, we'll cut a section through the building here, looking at those walls you're discussing, but in reality, this wall that you currently see from your patio will likely be at a similar or at the same height. So
You'll
you
give an
likely won't
elevation
see.
of both, right?
Yes,
Both plots, just for,
sure, yep.
the south side's obvious.
Mhm.
It's all in terms.
Any other comments? No, I think, yeah, just start addressing those issues, and we'll see you in the next couple of meetings then.
Great, thanks.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.